Hello, hello, hello. This is Kenny Perkins, aka your cancer guy. And once again, as always, we bring to you another phenomenal guest. Listen, our next guest is not just any ordinary person. No, 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 no. Listen, she came all the way from Boston, right, to here to Los Angeles, and she's kicking butt and taking names. That's what I say about her. She started an organization called We Got This. She wrote a book talking about We Got This and how to thrive. For those that are going through anything of cancer nature or just need to have that mindset of knowing that you can do it. She's motivating you. Here she was diagnosed with stage 4, but guess what? You see the smile on her face. You would never know that. She's amazing. Her spirit is amazing. And I am honored to bring our next guest, Elissa Culver, to the stage. Hey,
Thank you. What a great
you,
intro. Appreciate you.
yeah, you got it. We got this.
We got it. Yes, exactly. True words.
Hey, Alyssa, tell me a little bit about you. Our listeners, you and I were talking a little bit backstage, whatnot, but help our listeners to know a little bit about you, where you come from, and what you're doing today.
Sure. As Kenny mentioned, I'm an East Coaster originally from Andover, Massachusetts, outside of Boston. Went to college out there at Babson College. And then the week after I graduated, I booked one-way ticket to LA and have been warmer ever since. I've been in LA about 15 years with my husband, Eric, and we have a 4.5-year-old daughter, Ellie. And I was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer just a few days before her first birthday. And that, of course, changed a lot in our trajectory of how we saw life. But it's, really evolved into finding a lot of purpose out of that pain and, finding silver linings wherever we can so that we can keep living our lives the way we want to live it.
Yeah, yeah, that's important. I mean, my goodness, coming all the way from Boston, what a one-way ticket. I mean, you already had your mind made up.
It's like, what's the worst thing? I fly back.
Yeah.
Um, I had a friend of mine, Zoe from Babson, that was from Westwood, right by UCLA. And I did an internship in LA going into my junior year of college, lived at UCLA, and I loved it. I had such a blast out here. And after I was like, we were a week before graduation. I was like, hey, Zoe, if I buy a one-way ticket right now, can I just come like stay at your house for a couple weeks and figure it out? And she was like, yeah. So her and her dad were gracious enough to let me do that. And, figure it out. I did. I worked in the music industry originally when moving out here. But really, my background has been in financial services and sales my whole career. And along the way, as a side passion project that turned into a huge endeavor, of course, I had a gym, a cardio boxing gym for about 4 years. And then still was working in financial service industry right through till getting diagnosed. And then, left at that time and have since then really poured my heart and soul into my nonprofit endeavor of wegotthis.org. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, but being in LA, it's nice to be able to like, be outdoors and golf in the middle of winter, go hiking. And now my daughter's old enough to we've gone on little hikes and she loves it and we can do all this stuff. So it's fun visiting back east, but we've definitely transformed into West Coasters.
I love that. I love that. I mean, you do everything. I mean, one end to the spectrum to the next, right? I mean, from music to finances. I mean, that's a big spectrum.
You know, Most of my crew is all, business and financing that. My husband went to Berklee College of Music, so he's a musician through and through. And it's fun being out here immersed with so many creatives. I never really considered myself one. And I was actually on my friend's podcast, Lauren, and her podcast is called Unleash Your Inner Creative. And she asked me to be on it when I was initially going through chemo and starting the nonprofit. And it wasn't that long ago that we were together, and I was like, I really appreciated that you had me do that. That was the first podcast I'd ever recorded, and especially because it's for creatives, because I'm not a creative. I'm like the business person. And her jaw dropped, and she was like, "You don't consider yourself a creative? Like that's crazy." And it really reformed a lot of that idea to me of like, LA is just this, of course, melting pot of every other state and places coming in. You're a unicorn, Kenny, being, born and bred here. And it's fun to explore all these things that you're like, I never thought I would do a nonprofit tech startup. I never thought I would open a gym or do these things. And that one-way ticket, I think, was my, jumping off point of being like, maybe I can be a little crazy and do some things that everyone else thinks is crazy. But, if I'm confident enough in where I want to go with it, I'm just going to do it.
For sure. I mean, I love that. I love that. I mean, you have a family now, but in the midst of all of that, you're still creating and building, and it's amazing. So
Thank
t-
you.
tell me a little bit about, so here you are, you come to Los Angeles from Boston, you're establishing yourself. When did when did you notice or when did you find out or symptoms you've had the cancer came about, right? Because it sounds like you were busy prior to this diagnosis, right? And you still are, but help us to understand what you were doing before and then what happened at the diagnosis.
So most recently, coming up to the diagnosis was that I had owned the gym and I sold it because we were trying to have a baby, which we eventually did have Ellie. And once I sold it, just like I got very lucky on the timing that then the pandemic happened not too long after. I never could have predicted that, of course. But then when lockdown happened, I was 2 to 3 months pregnant at the time. So I was really like, I wasn't around people when I was fully pregnant, which was a bit of an odd experience. And going into the hospital to have Ellie amidst like an uptick in July when it was, things were pretty rampant again. I couldn't even like walk around the hospital floor safely. Like I, had to really stay pretty secluded. My family, that was gonna fly out, couldn't, all those things. And so the focus was all around, having a healthy pregnancy and all of that, which the one positive piece was being in lockdown. I mean, I was in really good shape when I was pregnant. Like I was working out a couple times a day. I was, meal prepping everything. We did like 2 months where we didn't order anything out, at all. And that was a nice silver lining. I felt good. But after I had Ellie, I started becoming more outward active again, like playing tennis again and doing some other things where I started noticing some weird symptoms, like my feet would go numb. That was the biggest thing because it was so noticeable. Like if I were on the tennis court for like 30 minutes, my feet would feel like they were about to explode out of my shoes. So I'd like sit down, take my shoes off, and like couldn't even get them back on. So that happened like a couple times when I was like, okay, I can't go commit to playing 2 hours of tennis with people and then 30 minutes in have to leave. And, I started going to specialists in all ends of the spectrum. Like, I had Ellie, why don't I just use my health insurance for what it's there for? And I saw, a gynecologist, I saw a rheumatologist. Like I thought, it was plantar fasciitis, or but then like PT wasn't really making a dent in it and other things till eventually we really came up with no answers. I even had a breast exam just because I was going through like full workups of anything. And it wasn't until my husband found the lump in my breast that we even started looking there. That, all the symptoms and things were more, numbness, pain, feeling off, which are also pretty common after you give birth to a human and carry them for 9 months. So when we did find the lump, I went back in. I had just had a breast exam 2 months before that, like I was mentioning, and I don't believe that the doctor missed anything. Like there wasn't there's certain times, even since having breast cancer, when I've had known recurrences, that like sometimes you just can't feel it the same way as others, dense breasts, other things. And once I did find it and like felt it, it kind of hurt, which I know isn't like super common either. And that's why I was like, oh, it's no big deal. It's probably like a cyst or something else. And when I went in to get it looked at, they found a lump in my armpit as well. And so that's when we went into mammogram, ultrasound, we biopsied it. And as I've already given away, it was cancer. And so since they were malignant, then going into learning more about, I never knew what HER2 positive was, or ER and PR and hormone positive or negative. I thought breast cancer was breast cancer, as many do. And it's so much more than that, as of course you know too. And it was along that road of understanding that I had breast cancer that had spread to my liver, had spread to my lymph nodes, my lower spine. Like that was a new thing for me to really understand what stage 4 metastatic cancer meant. And that was really when everything shifted from having this idea of a period of time of having surgery, maybe chemo and these things, to it being a lifelong understanding of what I was getting into, of
Mm,
course, forced into, right? And it's, a lot has happened along the, 3.5 years that we've been in this, but the amount that I've learned is unbelievable. Of like, I'm still learning new things all the time about, and of course we all are, right? And research and all these things, but it's really amazing when you dive into the community, like I was saying, like people like you, Kenny, and within this world of people sharing their information and shared experiences, that I think makes such a huge difference. And that's why it was so important to me to be involved in something much bigger than my own story.
for sure. And that's quite a bit, right? Trying to figure out what's going on and, just saying, "Man, goodness, I'm having this fatigue and a little pain, but not understanding it." And then, wow, you get hit with this. Yeah, this is breast cancer. It's like, that must have been shocking. How did you and your husband, uh, not only as husband and wife, but now as parents, how did you guys take that?
It was, we took it very differently, but then figured it out as a team. So the initial call was, of course, like just stopped us in our tracks. Like, wait, I have breast cancer? What are you talking about? And then when we were in the office learning that it had metastasized after seeing the PET scan results, that's when like the realness really hit, where I was just kind of in shock, spitfiring questions. It's like, want to know all the things. Like, am I dying? Is, what's happening? What am I doing next? And all of that. And my husband, just went into shock. He like turned white and was hyperventilating. They like had him breathing into a paper bag. And then they, handed us this folder that had some resources in it. And we just kind of went and waited till we figured out, or we were told to wait. I don't sit very long, but we were told to wait till we could like schedule chemo. But it was after that doctor's appointment where we like, you know, caught our grounding again and we got home and we were like, okay, we need to figure out how we're going to handle this to make sure that we take care of ourselves as individuals and how we work as a team. Because, like, we can't both take on everything from each other, or else how am I going to get through chemo and all this stuff? And how are you going to get through being a caregiver and us being parents? So, we really took the time very early on to like establish and recognize that this is obviously a huge deal, but that like we're not going to get through it unless we plan in advance how we can best work together. And I think that was a big game changer for us, coming to that realization so early on. And we've been that way where as my daughter ages, different things come up. Like, she was just over 1 by the time I was shaving my head, and losing it from chemo. We were so nervous, like, oh, she's gonna be scared of me or like not know what's going on. And like she didn't know. She thought it was awesome. She was like rubbing my head, like she's 1, but now that she's 4, she'll randomly see pictures of when I was bald and be like, Mommy, I don't want you to be bald again. Or
Oh,
when there's more of a realization there, and figuring out how we handle that has been a big part of recent life. And I think in some ways a really positive thing, like facing it head on and making sure that Ellie knows that cancer's not just people getting sick and dying. Like it's something that's so prevalent right now and in general, that as much as we all want to be cured and get rid of it and prevent it, so many people are living with it and treating it, and there are some cures depending on the cancer. And I want her to see that. And by the time kids are talking about cancer and other stuff, she's educated enough to not just be afraid of me dying.
Yeah. Yeah. I love your approach.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Yeah, and it's important. It's important because sometimes those kids, you don't think that they're paying attention, but they really are. And sometimes they can't express themselves, as clearly as the feelings that they have. So it's nice that you are able to kind of sit down and go over things with her and explain that. That's important. And it's important for the families that are listening to this, right? If you're going through, your kids are going through something, and as you're going through your treatments, you need to pay attention to your children. They can sense that. So I love that you've touched on that, and you and your husband are about educating along this journey. So I love that. I always do that. It's important to find out what you were doing prior to, because no one asked for this. No one asked to be catapulted to the front of the line of dealing with life, right? And so here you are, and I love the energy you have. I'm just looking in the background, right? And I'm looking at your post-its and your logos, and it's just energy, and it's fun, and it's excitement, and that says a lot about you. So tell us a little bit, because as you went through these treatments and going through those treatments, you know h- how did you get the mindset that you were going to you know, have the strength to do this?
It was much easier, to be honest, when I was in treatment that had a definitive amount of time. Even though that treatment was arguably the toughest, I was initially on TCHP, and during that time, I knew that I could only do 6 to 8 rounds. We ended up doing 8 rounds, but like it's not like that could be an indefinite thing. So even on the worst days, well, it really sucked. It wasn't like it got me so torn down because I knew that it was going to end. It was really after that when you start setting into the idea that this is lifelong, as it stands now, metastatic breast cancer is not curable and you have to stay in treatment. And so that's where I hit some speed bumps of certain treatments being very hard to tolerate or affecting certain things in life when you're like, my goal is to be on this as long as possible, but it's also very hard to be on. And balancing out those feelings is really tough because you're balancing out like being grateful that you're alive and that there are treatments that exist that did not exist, not all that long ago. But then you also want to prioritize living and being yourself and being able to enjoy life. And it's a constant balance that I think I'm working on every day, and I keep it front of mind because to me it's the most important thing. Like, or it's equally as important. I need to survive and stay alive because I want to be here. But I need to live and thrive because I want to live life. And balancing those two things isn't 100% in our control. There's a lot of things out of our control. So I try to control as many controllables as I can and make this experience whatever I can as it ebbs and flows, and try not to be torn down by the idea of things being so indefinite. And that's when the mindset really shifted. And I've definitely had ups and downs, but I think what's kept me the most grounded in feeling encouraged and hopeful has been, the work I've been doing with my nonprofit for We Got This. And a lot of that is because of the people that I get to communicate with, that I get to see so many amazing organizations and people doing awesome stuff that you're like, okay, I'm stuck in this club that we all didn't want to be in, but like, wow, how amazing. Like that there's so many like-minded people wanting to make life better for the community as a whole. And that's something that if, we can just keep being alive long enough for more and more treatments to come out and more research to be done. Like, I just want to keep experiencing that and being a part of the progress that we get to make.
Yes. Yes, and you are. You're definitely a part of it. You're definitely putting your landmark, and we love that. And you touched on something that I believe a lot of people go through, especially when I say people, people who are couples or married, have a significant other, you know, it's balancing, right? Because if you're not careful, what I have seen is that the diagnosis and going through this journey can overtake your life. And rightfully so, right? Because you're battling, you want to stay on top of it, and it's consuming. But at the same time, you have a mate, you have a partner. So, how do you guys balance like date night and hanging out and saying, today we're going to not talk about this, we're going to focus on us? Is there a little secret sauce or something that you guys do that you can give to our listeners?
I definitely have some strategies, but I'd say we're always working on it because it's funny. We have enacted like a regular date night. It might change which day of the week it is, but like every week we try to prioritize during the week, like not just on the weekends, but like during the week that we're going to go out as a couple and enjoy ourselves. And we try to, not just go the place we always go to. We try to like pick a new restaurant or do something new. And it's funny because our date night this past week, we went to a friend's comedy show and it was about her breast cancer story. And it was fantastic. It was really great. But after it, I was like, I'm sorry, we don't have to go to any more cancer things on our fun time. But yeah, I think that we've really, it's constantly readjusting. Like, we're definitely by no means perfect on it. And I'm more the guilty one of like, I get so immersed in this world because it's so meaningful to me what I'm working on, but trying to really find that balance. So things like putting our phones aside. They have that thing, it's called like a brick where it bricks your phone. So when we go out for date night, we use it. It makes it so it like turns off all apps where your phone literally just works as a phone. And so we use that, when we go out, he's better at it than me. But that way I'm not like, subconsciously just like scrolling on Instagram or something. Really trying to make our time together our time. And even with my chemo infusions, he can't come every single time, but like that's been a big priority is he'll take the day off of work when I have my infusions. And, you might hear that and be like, well, yeah, of course. But it's like, yeah, of course, maybe for 8 rounds. But I mean, we're going 3.5 years now with infusions every 3 weeks. So the fact that he genuinely wants to be there for them all is really amazing, and it means a lot to me. So finding the ways that we can support each other, whether it's cancer related or not. I've definitely found that like trying to block the cancer out or all of that, it can be really tough. And so I think that my strategy has been really leaning into the aspects that make me happy. I'm definitely not happy that I got cancer, but with having it, I think that I've given myself this permission to like live life so much larger, really, you know, buy the concert tickets. Whereas before I might be like, we don't need to go to that one. It's like, no, I got to go that one. Or, prioritizing the date nights and the nights out. And those are the things that I think you can lean into and be like, yeah, we have a perspective that not everyone experiences. And we should take advantage of that and not just let that pass by.
For sure. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Date night, putting the phone away, prioritizing, right? I mean, those are all things that, requires work. It requires, I mean, it's strategizing, right? And so I appreciate you letting us into that, right? Because a lot of couples is struggle with that. And that was the reason why I brought that up. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I love that the hubby is showing up for the chemo appointments and 3 years in. So Hubs, hey, big up to the hubby. What's his name?
Eric, yeah, he's a good
Hey,
one.
hey, big up to Eric. Eric, keep it up, my man. Keep it up. We appreciate you. We appreciate great, partners like yourself. And we couldn't do it without your support. So those partners that are there supporting, we appreciate you so much on that. Yeah, I just want to make sure I shout those people out. Right.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I mean, our caregivers are the invisible patients, and they go through a lot of what we go through without the same recognition, or, he still has to go to work every day and do all the things, and he's carrying the weight if I'm too tired to get up, and my daughter needs to be taken to school, or all these things. And finding the ways to balance that is really hard, and I recognize that too. It's not easy, and it's something that is really challenging for anyone that's a human. But very lucky that Eric is my MVP for sure. I could not be more grateful for it.
Yes. Yes. And so as you go through these chemo treatments and you're talking about every 3 weeks and you're going through it and this is going to be an ongoing thing. How do you muster up that mindset in order to be like staying positive, right? Because you can get into your head and overthink, right? So how do you manage that?
Sometimes it's easier than others depending on which treatment it is. But for the most part, I plan around each treatment something kind of fun. So whether it's like bringing the nurses a surprise, like donuts or something fun, or we got this, we partner with Lego, and we did an initiative with the botanical line of Lego flowers, which was a gift I had gotten early on in chemo that I loved, because it was flowers that never die. And, like, you don't necessarily want to give fresh flowers to someone who's immunocompromised. So we built a lot of the flowers with the local school and delivered some of those. And so now when I go into my infusion center, a lot of them we gave them to the patients and the nurses take home, some built, some unbuilt if they wanted to build them, but they kept some as like decor. And that's really neat. Like when I walk in and I'm like, that's cool that, I got to be a part of certain things. So I try to have something planned around each infusion that makes it so that I have a, distraction that is worth that time. And for those who haven't gotten chemo or experienced it, it's like the infusion itself isn't, it's kind of anticlimactic. Like when I went in for my first ever chemo infusion, I mean, you're like hyped up, you're ready to go. And you don't really experience symptoms for like a couple days, it's definitely like wears on you, and it can be a long time. And I ice my hands and feet to prevent neuropathy and different things like that. But it's finding the rhythm in each one that takes a little bit of time. Before my initial chemo, though, I that was when I started getting like advice on certain things to get, where I didn't know what I needed for cancer. And this is before my nonprofit, of course. And a couple of the main things that really stood out to me that I did was getting my eyebrows microbladed and my hair cut. Because my friend was like, because my hair was really long. She's like, when your hair starts falling out, one, it really kind of stinks, like pulling out really long strands of clumps of hair. She was like, it also kind of hurts a little bit. So like having that extra weight on your roots can be a lot also. So it's like, okay, so I need a haircut, and then, the advice to microblade my eyebrows before I lose them. And like I went into chemo feeling like a rock star. Like I felt awesome. I was like, man, why didn't I get my eyebrows microbladed like in regular life? This looks great. And I focused on so many things outside of me. I got custom Air Force Ones painted with the breast cancer ribbon, like all these things that made it feel like eh, just something bigger and more important of me feeling good versus like whatever the drugs that were going into me that are going to make me feel bad. Like that day and prepping for it was like I was highlighted, and I felt good and special and pretty.
Yes. I love that. I love that. And so here you are, you get the beauty tips, you get the whole making things, planning things around the whole chemo. And I love that. So I hope you guys are getting those gems because Alyssa's dropping them today. She's dropping gems. If you're going through chemo, you're getting prepared, plan some things around it. You know what I mean? Microblading. Those are things that people don't talk about. And so thank you so much for helping the listeners to see there's ways to continue to keep that beauty going and making feel good because it's what to say, look good, feel good, right?
Yeah, and whatever that looks like for you, I'm really into sneakers, so like getting those sneakers made before chemo is like really exciting for me. Whatever is gonna make you feel awesome. Like if there's a favorite restaurant you have, like maybe hitting that up before or after chemo, depending on how you feel after your infusions. But that was something we did for a while on my infusions that were a bit more tolerable, like after I'm in the valley, so I was going to Santa Monica and we'd go down the PCH. So on the way back, we'd hit up a different restaurant each time, like in Malibu or Topanga Canyon. And it was really special, kind of like, hey, let's fit in this special moment before this stuff hits. And it gave me something to look forward to on the days that I didn't look forward to.
For sure. For sure. Now talk to us here. So not only do you have these challenges, but you're making lemonade out of these lemons, right? I mean, that's just a figure of speech. But not
Sure.
only are you doing those things, you also started an organization. We got this organization. Talk to us and the listeners about your organization and what it represents.
Well, exactly what I was just explaining. That's really what inspired this whole idea was when you're diagnosed, everyone's asking how they can help. And it's so wonderful. And that's like so amazing that I have that support system, but I didn't know what I needed and I really didn't want to ask for help. And having so recently done a baby registry, or, back when I got married, doing a wedding registry, it's very normalized to tell people what you need and also to get tons of advice on it, right? Like when you go on baby lists to do a baby registry, as an example, like they're recommending different bottles, different diaper type, all these things, like what you should be registering for. And it just felt like when it was happening, like, why don't we have that? We kind of only have things that feel a bit like charity, which, there's nothing wrong with. I just didn't feel comfortable doing like a GoFundMe. And then a meal train, which my friend Amber, who now works with me at We Got This, just did our meal train. And I mean, essentially, she put in the notes like they appreciate everything, but Alyssa doesn't know what she can eat and all of that. That just like DoorDash or Grubhub gift cards would be most helpful. And it was hugely helpful. Everyone did that. And so this idea, came together that evolved much bigger than I ever imagined, but into this idea of a gift registry for cancer patients. And within that, you can set it up like a GoFundMe. Like you can ask for donations, you can add products and services from any website, you can add Grubhub and DoorDash gift cards too. And the aspect of making it easier to ask for help and to give help in a time like cancer, that it's hard to know what you need and know what to give and everyone wants to support and rally around you, is of course the primary piece. But a secondary piece that really has just shown through these past couple years is the idea that like as you register for things, it educates your support system on what you're going through. So like I love tampons. They're like nose tampons. I get nosebleeds quite frequently from chemo. And that like educates the person buying me tampons that like, oh, I didn't realize Alyssa got nosebleeds, or the different things that make it feel like wow, like they can feel a part of understanding the pieces that we really don't talk about. And I think that that brings the giving and receiving to such a deeper level that ultimately helps everyone so much more, to understand. And I hope that as my support system has learned more through my process of chemo and surgeries and all these things, I hope that even though it's horrifying to have stage 4 cancer and all of this, but I hope that it doesn't scare them as much. Like they get to see that I'm living, that there are like pretty simple solutions to some of the discomforts that we have. And there are
Yeah.
some more complicated ones. But like building that community piece of We Got This is really where the main mission is rooted out of. And it's really expanding onto the community that like you're not alone, not only with your cancer community, but like your supporters too. And it's so often that, and I love it, like the dark humor and pages on things people say right or wrong to cancer patients and all of that. But aside from like a good laugh, it's like, okay, well, why don't we help them to do it right? Like, why don't we help educate more so that people can understand what we're going through? And that's a big part of what we're trying to do too.
I love it. I love it.
Thanks.
If you guys are looking to help out, you need to help into someone who's maybe going through this, maybe going through this journey. We got this. Maybe the page for you. Make sure you check that out. WeGotThis.org. And then not only do you have the organization behind it, you got a book, right? Talk to us a little bit how that came about.
Yeah, so it was a couple Octobers ago that my friend was like, "Hey, my company wants someone to talk about breast cancer for Breast Cancer Awareness Month," and I was like, "Awesome! Like, that'd be great." And it was a big company, like 1,000 employees, so, like can talk about the nonprofit and like awareness and all this stuff. So I talked like how we're talking. It was on a Zoom call, and it was like international and everything. And then after the call, the company donated like a sizable donation, and I was like, "Oh." Can I like get more donations by speaking? So I started kind of like putting that seed out more to people of like, okay, how can I make this public speaking thing more relevant for us that we got this? So like there's more ways to be able to bring in revenue for the nonprofit. And it was through that world I joined this community called Impact 11, which is full of amazing thought leaders and speakers. And when I was there, there's a publishing company, Amplified Publishing, that I met the owner of, and we just kept running into each other. And finally, he's like, "All right, talk to me. Like, we've run into each other like 5 times. Like, who are you? What do you talk about? All this." So I started telling him about my story, and we got this. And he just like, kind of his eyes got a little red, and he was like, "I just lost my mom a month ago to cancer. And this hits so hard for me. Like, this is amazing, and I really want to learn more about it." And so after the event that I was at, we hopped on Zoom and talked more about it. And that's when, kind of this idea that a lot of people tell you, like a lot of people told me when I was starting chemo, a lot of people got me journals and all these things, like, you got to keep notes because you should write a book. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm never gonna sit still long enough to write a book, but thank you. And this is when it became like a reality that, like, oh, okay, this is something I can do. Like a lot of these people that I'm meeting, they've written books or they're writing books. And initially my thought was like, wow, if I could put this into a book that Ellie can have for her life, like whether no matter when I'm here till, unfortunately, we're all terminal. Like, it would just be really special to like have that and thought out. And so that's when that process started about a year ago. And it's in pre-sale right now and out for print. And it's just so exciting because it was this like really therapeutic experience going back, not just to, it's not just my cancer story, like it's utilizing my life of how I've redefined success in different ways and how a lot of those things helped to prepare me for really difficult times. And I talk a bit about, I lost my brother to addiction about 9 years ago. um in preparation for not only cancer but like preparation for starting a nonprofit. Like, I've never been in the nonprofit space, but I went to school for entrepreneurship, and like starting a business and having resources and all that stuff was something in my arsenal. And so I didn't know that I would pull those levers for this purpose, but like it really culminated in a cool way that the book was as much for me, and kind of that therapeutic experience as I hope it is for everyone. Like, I think that people with cancer or who have people close to them will be able to directly relate. But I also think that there's a lot of themes throughout it that really anyone would relate to and hopefully understand. So it's really exciting. It's been a fun process, and I can't wait to actually get it in people's hands so I can hear what they think. And you got to read it, so make sure you get one once they arrive.
Absolutely. I'm gonna be waiting for my copy here. I'm telling you. I want to
Absolutely.
make sure I get that for sure. Listen, Alyssa, you are amazing. You have your hands in a little bit of everything. You're staying active. Your energy is good. You have a great support team between your family, and we love that. We love that. We love to see that. And so, for those that may be going through a hard time, Alyssa, and you may know some of those ups and downs. What can you give to those listeners that may be struggling at the moment?
And I always try to be as real as possible that like I mean, I'm having a tough time lately with I've just started Kedsila, I have some new back pain and extreme chemo fatigue and all this stuff. And there are definitely hard times. And I think that leaning into that and recognizing that that's like totally understandable and normal and okay really helps because, you know, in my life in general before cancer, I'm one to be a bit hard on myself and we can like strive for perfection, all this stuff. And, I always say like, good is the enemy of great, and like there has to be some grace that we give ourselves in life in general. And cancer is not a prerequisite to prioritizing living in your life, but doing what's going to help you most. If find the areas that are hurting the most. Like right now, my back pain's a really big symptom, very bad chemo fatigue. And when that fatigue gets in, I tend to get a lot more down. So that's when, I talk more to my psychiatrist, make sure that I'm on the right meds that I need. And I went a long time without actually taking any meds for depression or anxiety. And it really didn't affect me much for the first like year and a half of being in treatment. And I remember early on one of the doctors saying, like, stay on top of that because you're not only working against the fact that you're going through such a hard time and juggling symptoms and all this stuff, but they're like chemo, affect like directly affects scientifically, like, chemically can affect your anxiety and depression. And that's so important. And I spent a little bit too much time trying to remedy that naturally of what had worked in the past. And I think recognizing that you're not who you were in the past. And I don't think that has to be a negative thing. Like in a lot of positive ways, like I'm even more eccentric than I ever was. Like I'm crazy now. I'll do anything. But when it comes to certain symptoms and side effects, like, don't torture yourself. Make sure that you have the right medical team that hears you and supports you. And if something is just a small issue and it's fine and you can get through it, okay. But if it's not, and you think it's a small issue to someone else, but it's a big issue to you, like recognize that and make sure that your team supports that because there are things like when I felt so down when I was on Enhertu and tucatinib, but it was working so well. It got rid of my brain tumors and it was really like a phenomenal outcome, but I was so depressed. And my oncologist, when I finally really spoke up, was like, well, we need to switch. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah, I mean, if you have no quality of life, like this is not working. And it was me holding that up. It was me feeling guilty asking to switch off something that I knew was working. It was me feeling guilty possibly doing something that like I knew my family and friends would be nervous about me changing. And so I think putting yourself first and knowing that there's not a solution to everything, unfortunately, but I think that there are a lot more solutions than we realize. Like there are a lot of things that can help with a lot of the aspects that can really help you live a quality of life. So my biggest advice is prioritize yourself. However you feel is the right way to feel. Like no one can tell you that. And make sure you have the right medical team and support system to help you through that and prioritize what you should be prioritizing, which is you.
There it is. Words of wisdom. Hey, we appreciate you. Want to say one, thank you so much for joining us here on All Talk Oncology and sharing your story and sharing what you're doing and how you're benefiting others in the midst of you going through treatments. It's amazing. And, they say there's more happiness in giving than receiving. And you definitely are giving in the midst of your treatments. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a part of us. And we hope that we stay in contact with you.
Absolutely. Appreciate you so much and all you do. And thank you so much for having me.
For sure. And as we always say to all those that are listening in, you're not alone in this. We're in this together. This is Kenny Perkins, AKA your cancer guy. And until again, I'm out.
So stay connected with us on All Talk Oncology Cancer Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to that right? Wherever you listen to your podcast, whether that's Apple, Spotify, make sure you subscribe and continue to spread that word, right? Engage in this because your engagement can help someone stay alive. And this is what we're talking about. So again, make sure you subscribe, hit that subscribe button. Again, this is Kenny Perkins, aka your cancer guy. Until again, I'm out.